The dream that refused to die, the true story of Walt Disney. Imagine this. You have a dream so big, so wild that the world laughs at you. People say you're crazy. They say it will never work, some even betray you. Most people would give up, but not Walt Disney. Walt was fired for not being creative enough. He went bankrupt. He lost his team. He lost his characters, but he never lost his belief. He didn't quit. He created Mickey Mouse. He built the Disney empire. He turned pain into power and dreams into a billion-dollar reality. This is not just a story about cartoons. It's a story about life, struggle, imagination, and unshakable belief. If you're feeling lost, if the world doesn't believe in you, this story is for you. And here's the bonus. You're not just being inspired. You're learning English naturally, emotionally, and powerfully through real stories told in simple, clear language. So let's begin. Walt Disney was born on December 5, 1901 in Chicago, Illinois. He was the fourth child in a large family. His father, Elias, was strict and often angry. His mother, Flora, was gentle and kind. She believed in Walt's creativity. When Walt was just 4 years old, the family moved to a small town called Marceline, Missouri. That town changed Walt's life. It had trees, animals, trains, and quiet streets, the perfect place for imagination. Walt watched the trains and dreamed of faraway places. He started drawing young, on napkins, scraps of paper, even the walls, but his family was poor. He didn't have notebooks or pencils, so he used charcoal from the stove and old newspapers to draw. That's how the Disney dream began, with a boy sketching with sticks on trash paper. One day, a neighbor saw a drawing of a horse and paid Walt 5 cents for one. That was his first money as an artist. Walt hated school. It was too strict, too. Boring. He loved daydreaming. His teachers scolded him. His father said drawing was useless. But Walt kept going. To help his struggling family, Walt and his brother Roy worked from a young age. At just 10 years old, Walt delivered newspapers every morning at 4 a.m., even in freezing Missouri winters. His hands bled from the cold. He fainted from exhaustion. But he never stopped drawing, because drawing made him feel alive. When World War I began, Walt wanted to join the army, but he was too young. So he forged his birth certificate and joined the Red Cross at just 16. He was driving ambulances in France. Even there, surrounded by war, he drew cartoons to cheer up wounded soldiers. That's who Walt Disney truly was. Even in war, he wanted to bring joy after the war. Walt came back home and said, "Now, I will become an artist." He worked in Kansas City making newspaper ads, but soon quit. He wanted to create something new, moving cartoons. He started a company called Overcame Films. It made fairy tale cartoons people loved. But Walt focused too much on creativity and not enough on money. He gave cartoons away for free and trusted the wrong people. Soon, he was broke, sleeping in his office with just $40 left. Instead of giving up, he borrowed $500, packed a small suitcase, and boarded a train to Hollywood. He believed his real story was just beginning. At 21 years old, Walt arrived in Hollywood with nothing but a suitcase, a sketch pad, and big dreams. He moved in with his uncle and started working in a garage. He created a new cartoon, a girl named Alice who lived in a cartoon world. A company in New York loved it and offered him a contract. Walt called his brother Roy. Roy was sick in a veterans' hospital but still believed in Walt. Together, they formed the Disney Brothers Studio, what would one day become the Walt Disney Company. They worked day and night. Their rent was just $10 a month. Their first character, Alice, was a small success. But Walt wanted more. He created a new character, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. Oswald was popular, but Walt didn't own him. Universal Pictures did. In 1928, Walt went to New York to negotiate a better deal. But instead he was betrayed. Universal had stolen Oswald and most of Walt's animators. Walt walked out of the meeting with nothing. No money, no studio, no team, no character. But on the train ride back home, Walt didn't give up. Instead, he created something new. He said, "They stole my rabbit, I'll create a mouse." And right there, he drew Mickey Mouse. This time, Walt protected Mickey with copyrights. He released a few silent cartoons, but they didn't do well. Then he did something no one had ever done. He added sound. In 1928, Walt released Steamboat Willie, the first cartoon with synchronized sound. It was a huge hit. Mickey Mouse became a star. And Walt Disney was back with Mickey's success. Walt and Roy built a real studio on Hyperion Avenue. Walt created more characters: Minnie, Goofy, Pluto, Donald Duck, and here's a secret. In the early years, Walt himself was the voice of Mickey Mouse. Mickey wasn't just a cartoon. He became a symbol of hope during the Great Depression. Merchandise sales soared: lunchboxes, toys, watches. Disney was earning over $1 million a year in the 1930s. Over $20 million today, but Walt didn't spend on himself. He put it all back into the studio. Then he had a crazy new idea. A full-length animated movie. Everyone thought it would fail. People called it Disney's Folly. It would cost over $1 million to make, and nobody thought people would sit through a 90-minute cartoon, but Walt believed. He chose Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. He pushed his team to their limits: shadows, emotions, music, perspective. Hand-painted scenes. Over 2 million drawings were made. Walt mortgaged his house. He lost weight. He broke down from stress, but when Snow White premiered in 1937, the audience stood and cheered. Many cried. It was a masterpiece. It made over $8 million, more than any film of its time. Walt proved animation could be powerful. Emotional and real. Walt used the profits from Snow White to build a new studio in Burbank, the most advanced animation studio in the world. Then came Pinocchio, Fantasia, Dumbo, Bambi, beautiful, emotional films, but then World War II hit. Disney lost most of its international revenue. The studio was in financial crisis. And worse, the people inside the company turned on him. Some artists felt overworked and underpaid. Tensions grew. In 1941, more than 300 employees went on strike. It crushed Walt. He saw the studio as a family. Now they were calling him a rat. Heartbroken, Walt left the company in Roy's hands and traveled to South America as a goodwill ambassador. Back home, the studio stopped making films and started producing military training videos and propaganda. Mickey, Donald, and Goofy were now wearing army uniforms, not to entertain, but to support the war. Despite the betrayal, the losses, and the war, Walt Disney never stopped. He had more dreams, bigger ones. He dreamed of theme parks, of worlds where people could step into magic. But that's a story for another time. Walt Disney didn't just build a company. He built a legacy. He taught the world that imagination is more powerful than money, that belief can beat betrayal, that even when everything is taken from you, you can still draw something that changes the world. They stole his rabbit. He gave them a mouse, and that mouse built a universe. Would you like me to continue the story into the Disneyland and Disney World chapters? Or turn this into a video audio script or English learning guide? During World War II, the U.S. government paid Disney to make military training films. It wasn't the kind of work Walt enjoyed, but he did it because survival came first. Even while the studio was producing war propaganda, even while recovering from betrayal and financial collapse, Walt's mind was somewhere else, traveling with his daughters, Diane and Sharon. He noticed something about the amusement parks they visited. They were filthy, cheap, and boring. He thought, what if there was a place where families could enjoy something together? A place where dreams felt real? Where stories came alive? Quietly, Walt began sketching castles, rides, and worlds, often on napkins. People assumed he was resting after years of stress. In truth, he was designing the future. When others thought he'd retire, Walt started dreaming bigger than ever. That dream became Disneyland. At first, it was just an idea: no land, no money, no support. One afternoon in the 1940s, sitting on a bench in Griffith Park as his daughters rode a merry-go-round, Walt had a simple thought. There should be a place where parents and children can have fun together. Most parks back then were unsafe and meant only for kids. Walt imagined something clean, beautiful, and immersive. At his studio, he drew until late at night: castles, mountains, rivers, trains calling it Mickey Mouse Park at first. He kept it secret. He knew people would call him crazy. Banks refused him. Investors laughed. Even Roy Disney, his brother, warned him it would ruin them. But Walt pressed on. He struck a deal with a BC in exchange for a weekly TV show. They'd invest $500,000 in Disneyland. On television, Walt promoted the park before it even existed, an unprecedented move that built excitement nationwide. He sold life insurance, mortgaged his home, borrowed from friends, and poured everything into the dream. In 1954, construction began on 160 acres of orange groves in Anaheim, California. The location seemed absurd: no freeways, no hotels, no tourism, but Walt saw potential. Everything that could go wrong did. Water pipes burst, heat warped concrete. Rides broke during testing. Contractors quit, workers called it Walt's nightmare. Yet every day, Walt walked the site in a hard hat, fixing, guiding, encouraging. Opening day, July 17, 1955, was chaos. Over 28,000 people crammed in with counterfeit tickets. Rides stalled, asphalt melted under high heels. The media called it Black Sunday and predicted failure. Walt ignored them. Weeks later, problems were fixed. Within a year, 3.5 million visitors had passed through the gates. Disneyland was unlike anything the world had seen. Main Street USA, Adventureland, Fantasyland, Tomorrowland, Frontierland, each corner rich in detail, music, and magic. Walt said, Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there is imagination left in the world. But Walt wasn't finished. Months later, he began dreaming of something bigger, a city of the future. EPCOT, the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, would solve problems like traffic, pollution, and overcrowding. No cars in neighborhoods, only monorails and people movers. A constantly evolving hub of technology, education, and beauty. Walt quietly bought 27,000 acres in Florida twice, the size of Manhattan, using fake company names to keep the price low. He poured himself into the project, sketching and planning, even from a hospital bed after being diagnosed with lung cancer in November 1966. Above his bed hung the model of Epcot. Roy Disney later said, even in his last days, Walt wasn't thinking about death. He was thinking about what the world could become. On December 15, 1966, just 10 days after his 65th birthday, Walt Disney died quietly in a Los Angeles hospital. Headlines read, the world loses its greatest dreamer. Roy came out of retirement to finish his brother's vision. On October 1, 1971, Walt Disney World opened 5 times bigger than Disneyland. Roy insisted on the name so no one would forget who dreamed it first. 2 months later, Roy passed away too. Today, the Walt Disney Company is worth over $180 billion, owns Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic, Hulu, and operates 12 theme parks worldwide. But the real legacy isn't money, it's the belief that imagination matters. Walt Disney wasn't rich, lucky, or perfect. He was fired, broke, betrayed, rejected, and sick. But he refused to stop dreaming. When the world laughed, he imagined. When the money ran out, he borrowed. When his body failed, he kept creating. If you take one thing from his story, let it be this: you don't need to be born lucky. You need a dream bigger than your fear. Because if Walt Disney could build an empire of joy with broken pencils and empty pockets, what's stopping you? As Walt himself said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible.